This is an ACMS takeoff report from a 747. This report gives us plenty of information about the aircraft and what it was doing at the given time. It tells us what aircraft we're looking at, what flight number it was flying, what date this occurred on, and the UTC or Greenwich Mean Time this report was printed. The aircraft had a gross weight of 315.4 tons and it was doing a calculated airspeed of 174 knots, which equates to just over 0.2 Mach. And the aircraft was currently at just under 1,100 feet above sea level, and the total air temperature was 22.5 degrees centigrade. The aircraft was on a heading of 16 degrees. It was leaving Orlando and it was heading for London. These are the respective General Electric CF6-80 engine serial numbers, and these are now the engine parameters. N1, or the fan speed, was at 98% on all four engines. The N2, which is the high pressure compressor, was all around about 102-103%, with an EGT just around about 800 degrees centigrade, with a fuel flow equivalent of just around about 8 tons per hour. And each engine had already had a fuel consumption of around about 296, 301, 313 and 305 kilograms of fuel. And this is the thrust lever angle of 71 degrees. So the throttles are not fully forward but at a high thrust setting. We're now looking at vibration for the fan. It's all looking good except for number 2, which is either indicating we have an issue with the sensor, or the fan has got a bit of a higher level of vibration to it. We're looking at the turbine vibration, which is all looking good. The VSV angles, the variable bleed valve are fairly closed. Number 4 engine is not fully shut, and the 4 generators are handling the aircraft electrical load fairly evenly. The inlet pressure to the 4 engines is shown here. The inlet temperature to the high pressure compressor is shown here. The output pressure of the high pressure compressor and the outlet temperature of the high pressure compressors. We've got the oil pressure, oil temperature and oil quantity of the 4 engines. The pylon valve is modulating. The starter valve are all shut off for the 4 engines. The fan modulating valves are now at about 74-73%. The bleed temperatures are all sitting there at those temperatures. The bleed pressures are at these pressures, and it's nice to know that the thrust reversers are all stowed. The auto throttle computer system is on, and further down we can see the fuel quantities. The initial quantities for the tanks are shown here. You can see the centre tank we are not carrying any fuel in, and we're not carrying any fuel in the horizontal stabilizer tank. The gross weight of the aircraft when started was 316 tons. We have now burnt some fuel, and due to the current pitch angle of the aircraft, the fuel has flowed back to give an apparent increase in some quantities in some of the tanks, but the gross weight has reduced to 315.4 tons, which means the aircraft has already consumed 1.2 tons of fuel. And if you go back to the fuel consumptions, add up those four totals, and you will just get 1.2 tons of fuel consumed. We can see here that the air data computers are telling us we are just under 1,100 feet above sea level at a speed of Mach 0.268, with a calculated airspeed of 174 knots and a true airspeed of 178 knots, with a ground speed of 171 miles an hour, with a wind speed of around about 7 miles an hour recorded. The angle of attack sensors are indicating a pitch up of 11 degrees, with a air temperature of 18.3 and a total air temperature of 22.5. The inertial reference systems are giving us Orlando's position in latitude and longitudinal coordinates. We're on a heading of 16 degrees and we are pitching up and we are rolling. This gives us the aileron, elevator and flap positions. The flaps are still out. This is showing us whether we are doing a coordinated right hand turn, and with the rudder slightly to the left. Sorry, to the right. Sorry. Now we are looking at an in-flight cruise report for the same flight, which is now several hours later. The aircraft has got lighter. It's now down to 274 tons, with a calculated airspeed of 289 knots, doing a max speed of just over 0.8 Mach. We are cruising at about 34,000 feet, and the total air temperature is being recorded at -19. And we're now on a heading of 74 degrees. The aircraft's engines are now at flight idle. You can see that the N1 and N2 speeds have been reduced. The EGT has dropped. The fuel flow is now around about 2.5 tons an hour, and the engines have consumed about just over 10.5 tons each, and the throttle angle has been reduced. The VSVs have altered. The VBVs are now should be all fully closed. The generators are yet again carrying an equally even load. The inlet pressure to the engines has dropped as we're now at altitude. The inlet temperature to the compressor has reduced slightly, and so has the outlet temperature of the high pressure compressor. Again, the oil quantity and temperatures, pressures are about the same. The start valves are still off, the pylon valves are still modulating, the fan modulating valves have slightly closed, reversers are still stowed, and the auto throttle is still on. We obviously have a problem with an air conditioning pack as it is still selected off. The ignition is all off. The anti-icing engine and wing are all off. And the pack temperature controller that's in charge is controller A. And as you can see, the various tank fuel quantities have reduced even more. The reserve tanks have been emptied and have filled main tanks 2 and 3. And as you can see, the gross weight is now down to 274 tons. The altitude is around about 34,000 feet, and we're doing 0.8 Mach, calculated airspeed of 289, true airspeed of 482 knots, with a ground speed equivalent of around about 555 miles an hour. We've got a wind speed of 74 miles an hour. Wind direction is 115 degrees. We're slightly a nose up pitch, with the air temperature outside at -50 and the true air and the total air temperature around -20. We are somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean on a heading of 74 degrees, where there's no roll. The aircraft is flying wings level, flaps are up, and we're heading quite happily on to London.